A job services company is taking the initiative to help protect employees from woke policies in the workplace. The company, Red Balloon, has released an employee bill of rights and responsibilities. This is a free legal resource that provides American workers and companies with a clear understanding of employee rights when dealing with woke discrimination in the workplace. The founder and CEO of Red Balloon says that across the country, thousands of conservative Americans have reported work discrimination because of their privately held beliefs. He said that some have even lost their jobs due to pressure from activist colleagues. He said that non-woke employees should make clear that they cannot be forced to go through training or workplace celebrations that violate their personal consciences. So this is how Red Balloon works. The companies requesting access to Red Balloon's job board are encouraged to take a pledge to not discriminate against employees over their private opinions, violate their constitutional rights, or invade their medical privacy. As of late October, at least 2,100 employees had signed the anti-woke pledge to protect their workers from retaliation. And earlier, I had the pleasure of speaking to the CEO of Red Balloon. Here he is. Great to have you on the show, Andrew. Now, the first thing I like to ask you is, what is this Employee Bill of Rights and what is its purpose?
Yeah, thanks so much, Don. I really appreciate it. So the Employee Bill of Rights is a tool. We hope it's a tool that a lot of Americans will use to understand what their rights are at work. And we all know that knowledge is power. And so if you know where you can stand up at work, where you can't stand up at work, and where you're going to get in a lawsuit or where you're not going to get in a lawsuit, then you're going to have the freedom to be able to know where you can push back in the workplace. And look, we don't want employees who are constantly pushing back on every little thing in the workplace, but this wokeness in the workplace is sapping the joy out of so many employees and really destroying the American workplace today. And so the Employee Bill of Rights and Responsibilities, we hope, is a tool that a lot of people use. And again, it is 5 rights and 5 responsibilities that every employee should know what their rights are. And that way, when you're asked to go to DEI training or CRT training, or you're asked about a vaccine mandate, you know how to push back, you know the right way to push back, because we don't want to be shrill like the left has been for so long, but we do want to know where we should stand our ground and where we just need to, stand up for our rights.
So now, you mentioned wokeness in the workplace. What kind of wokeness are you seeing here?
Yeah, so it has been shocking over the last, it's really about the last 15 years that we've seen the left, the wokeness creep into the workplace, and it's really destroying what we think should be the American way in the workplace. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I was talking to a lady at Microsoft, and she had an American flag for her background for Teams. She was a vice president, and she was told by the HR department, you know what, that is triggering to other employees because it's a sign of white supremacy, the American flag, right? And another employee was at Deloitte, and they were going through this DEI training and basically told for like 2 hours straight, you're all racist just because you have a pulse. And she said there were people of all skin colors in there, and they were all told that they're racist just because that's straight out of the CRT playbook. That kind of thing is actually tears people down, and I think it breaks them down so that they won't be courageous or brave in other aspects of their life. And so this wokeness in the workplace is what redballoon.work is pushing back against. The Employee Bill of Rights is a tool because we want people to be informed. It was written by Laura, the labor lawyer, and she has a Harvard law degree and spent 20 years in the People's Republic of California pushing back against silly things in the workplace. And so this is a free tool, and if you go to redballoon.work/bill, you can actually download this report for free. Read it, pass it around. We want American workers to have the knowledge to be brave, because if they do that, we're going to have a better country.
And Andrew, just briefly for our viewers, what are some of the rights of workers according to this Employee Bill of Rights?
Yeah. So there's a couple of them that are pretty intuitive, like you have the right to be paid. And you'd say, well, of course I have the right to be paid. But there was a lot of people who had wages removed from them or kept from them during the COVID mandates, where they actually said, look, if you don't do this, we're not going to pay you. Well, you have a right for that, and you will win that lawsuit. One that might be shocking to a lot of Americans, or at least conservatives, is you have the right to organize. And you say, well, organize, that sounds like labor. Do we really want to have labor unions? And the answer is, well, labor unions were originally formed for workers to have protection against corporations that were trying to take advantage of them. But today, the HR department is who we need protection from. The HR has unfortunately become kind of the epicenter of the woke cancer in a lot of these companies. And so as employees, you need to know that you can get together after work and say, you know what, we're going to sign a petition that we don't want a mask mandate. We don't want a vaccine mandate. We don't want DEI training. You're allowed to do that. You're covered by law. And if you push back in that way, the company has to listen to you, and they're not allowed to penalize you for that. And so just having that knowledge is a really big deal. Because at redballoon.org, we actually did a coming out conservative campaign in the month of June and just encouraged people to come out conservative, live their values out loud. Well, what happened is a lot of people wrote us and said, so I did this, and I found that 80% of the people in my company actually agree with me. And it's only 3 woke people that were pushing back and making the rest of us super miserable. And so when you get an employee group together and say, look, this is the type of culture that we want. We don't want these mandates. We want to live our values out loud and be free at work. You will be empowered in that moment. And so those are the type of things that we want American workers to know so that they respond and act in a brave and courageous way.
So I have to raise a concern here, Andrew. Now, if you go against some of these woke policies, if you stand up against them, perhaps you might not get fired. As you mentioned, workers have rights, but you could get on the wrong side of your employer, and your employer certainly could make your life a lot harder at work because of this. Is there something that can protect workers against that?
Yeah, I actually was talking to a Fired Up Texas lawyer. He's a guy that's actually his handle is Fired Up Texas Lawyer. And he said, you are more protected by law when you're brave and come out as a conservative, because be aware, the woke people in your corporation, they know that you're the conservative because you're not getting excited about DEI or you're not getting excited about Gay Pride Month. So they know you're the conservative already, and they're already limiting your career because of that. But if you come out and are brave and courageous and say, you know what, I go to church on Sunday, or you know what, I would like to not go to that DEI training, here's my religious exemption. When you do that, you're now more protected by law than you were before, because now you're in a position where you've come out publicly, and now if they hold back your career, now if they make your life miserable, it is discrimination. But if you just try and keep your head down and don't do anything, try and not let anybody know who you are, well, then if you're discriminated against, which you probably are, there's nothing you can do about it because you can't point to an event where you were actually courageous. So it is actually a protection to be brave in the workplace, and that's why we want Americans to know about the Employee Bill of Rights and Responsibilities.
Now, some of these employers who sign up for your anti-woke pledge, do they tell you why they do it? What's in it for them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So redballoon.org is only about a year old, and we are, you can think of it as an employment matchmaking service for conservatives. And what's been super encouraging is we have this pledge that said you have to believe the Constitution still matters and has a huge impact on everybody. And I'm going to protect the rights of my current and future employees. So all of our employers have signed that pledge, and we've only been at it for a year, and we've had over 2,000 employers say, you know what, I want to raise my hand and sign that pledge. Why do they do that? Because then they get access to the best workers. We're having employers come to us and say, every person I hire off redballoon.org is cleansing to our culture because they're just hardworking conservatives who want to bring value to my company, to my customers, and they're great with me making money off of their labor. And one employer said, all the other people that I've had, they're coming through Indeed or ZipRecruiter, they're a bunch of HR nightmares because they're just snowflakes whining about every little thing. Whereas the people coming through redballoon.org are hardworking conservatives. They want to bring value. And so that's why companies are posting on redballoon.org. If you're a worker, the reason you want to go here is because you want freedom in the workplace. You have no idea what an impact it will make on you and your family and your community when your vocation, when your job is with a company who's mission aligned. And that's what redballoon.org is all about.
So, Andrew, I'm curious. Companies, spend some $8 billion every year on DEI training. Why do you think they do this? Why are they willing to spend so much money on that?
Yeah, great question. For those who don't know, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion training. as you said, over $8 billion is spent in America every day on this, or every year on this, not every day. Why is this? Why are companies doing this? It's just a virtue signal. If you actually track it back to 2008, when you had the Occupy Wall Street movement, a lot of companies kind of woke up and said, hey, we need to be the good guys, and then we can do whatever we want. So if we're Nike, we want to be able to say that slavery is terrible while effectively using slave labor in Asia, right? And so the way they do that is through virtue signaling. And they said, okay, who has the biggest microphone in our society who can say that we're the good guys no matter what we do? And the answer was the liberal media. And so these corporations said, look, let's virtue signal to corporate media, to the big woke media. And if we do that, then we can get away with murder, almost literally, and everyone will still think we're the good guy. And so this DEI training is a virtue signal. Intel Corporation has committed $300 million over the next 10 years to focus on DEI and CRT training in the workplace. It's terrible. And it actually just tears workers down and destroys the American dream because it is a form of discrimination. And so these companies are trying to virtue signal to big media, but workers should know what their rights are so they can push back against it.
Just one last thing, Andrew. I wonder if you can tell me just how much does virtue signaling actually benefit companies?
It does. You see the ESG scores that a lot of companies have when they're on Wall Street. And ESG, environmental social governance, it's basically a scoring system to say how woke are you, how aligned with the democratic agenda are you. And companies like BlackRock are actually investing huge amounts of money in companies that have DEI training, that have a high ESG score, because they want to actually push that worldview. So they're getting props from the left for doing these type of things. And people on the right, conservatives, have not been pushing back enough. But the reality is that conservatives are the largest ideological group in America, but we've been the least likely to say anything and to push back. And if we push back, they're going to stop getting the credit that they've been getting for this DEI training. And I think they'll stop because a lot of them still are capitalists at heart.
Yeah, it's a very serious issue, but thank you for talking to me about it today. Andrew Crapuchette, CEO at Red Balloon. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.